it was basically a kind of a sneaky, long job search. What had kind of started as just a relocation from New York City to Connecticut, um, eventually, ended in a job which was it lasted a year, and it resulted in a riff, based on just budget concerns. Nothing, within my job performance, but that kind of set off I don't want to say it's kind of a domino effect, but a very quiet domino effect, whereby I just found myself kind of tumbling, and with one exception, which I'm sure I'll bring up later. I was pretty much just descending when it came to job satisfaction, any kind of career growth, and any kind of salary that was even close to what I used to make. And so, yes, there were definitely times, and as you know, but it'll be new to your audience. The process was extensive, in and around 10 years, with a lot of different respites, shall we say, where, I thought, okay, now I'm, headed in a better direction, got another job, and, something might have come along that kind of blindsided me there. And so, it was a lot of, if you could graph it, Jane, it would be kind of down, and then, ever spiraling down, a little up, down again, that type of thing. So yes, absolutely. And to answer your question, there were absolutely times when I wanted to give up. And, as things go, sometimes you sleep on it, you get up, and then you just start again.
And it sounds like you had, or you developed a lot of grit. So what part did just your pure determination play in it?
I think it was, to a great extent, pure determination, especially towards the end, which I'll reference as the final sprint, I guess you could say. The determination, did waver over the early part of this search. There were times when, I would basically sit and say, having just, garnered a job of some sort, possibly after a layoff, possibly, okay, I went from one job to another, did a lateral move. There were those bits of downtime where you say to yourself, all right, look, I'm going to give myself a rest for a while. I'm going to inactivate the Indeed, or just kind of keep it going and just kind of scan through it, just to always see what's out there. But yes, of course, over 10 years, there were times when, I would absolutely give myself a break, and, not bother myself with those types of things for periods of time. But I do want to say that, I would always pick it up again, and whether it was the circumstances that kind of came my way that forced my determination again, or whether it was, the realization that, this particular position now is going to, not measure up to my expectations, whatever it may be, kind of there is your impetus for the grit, for lack of a better term. And so I would just kind of grind it out and say, all right, well, this isn't going to happen. This is not going to be a long lasting type of position, or this is not going to be an appropriate position, or just be laid off. And obviously that's not where anybody wants to be. And so, you kind of naturally, cultivate that grit when you're on unemployment.
Yes. And what things did you find the most helpful? Did you do a lot of networking? What kind of things did you do when you were feeling like you were kind of on a roll where you were finding something that might be appropriate.
Yes, I've seen, let's see, I mean, if I go back 20, 25 years, I had done a paid career coach plan when I was still in New York State, but not in New York City. I was in upstate New York in Albany. And I did a paid recruiter who gave me a bunch of tools, back then, right? This is the, say, early 90s. It was notebooks. And so, and we also had cassettes. So, throw that out there for some of your folks, play this cassette and listen to, here's some of the, the speeches you should give, your elevator speech, and then there's somebody on a cassette, actually saying, reciting some of those words. So, yeah, there were a number of those types of things. There were touch bases I had, with networking with employment groups after layoffs. I know there was a one here in Guilford, a local one at the church. This is a lot more recent, but I was an attendee there a couple of times after 2 different layoffs. And as a matter of fact, I've reached out to them to kind of, give back some help to them and maybe, speak in front of those folks when they get back to, face-to-face types of meetings. But there were just a number of, different avenues that I took. And it really was a roller coaster. But, I found that the circumstances really dictated what I should do as opposed to me really driving it. It was always the circumstances dictating, which I really didn't love, because I didn't feel that I was in control of myself and my own destiny. Whereas back in New York City, it was strangely enough, it was a small fraternity of people that did what I did there. And we all knew each other. There were very few. If you didn't know that person, you knew someone that knew them. And it was just, we're talking about advertising, print production with the agencies and with certain client side corporations, American Express, Chase, I'm forgetting one other, but, and so you were looking for a new job. There was one recruiter who handled everybody in that business. And everyone knew who she was. And you go up to her place. She had an office in her apartment or a condo. You go up and see Ellen, and she would give you all the lowdown. She got me and my colleagues a number of jobs.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and she was the one to go to. But again, everyone knowing each other, everyone kind of doing the same thing, having the same background, very, very specialized industry. And so you take the New York City out of that, and then, you come into, the burbs, and it's like the carpet is, is the rug's pulled out from under you. And so
Wow. Yeah.
there's just no landing place really that I could find here in Connecticut.
Crazy. So then you reinvented yourself a little bit career-wise.
I tried to do that, Jane. One of the things that came as a result of, let's see, I had 2 RIFs here in Connecticut, one from a really great job, which was the best job that I had held here in this state. But unfortunately, that one lasted 8 months, just under a year, and the department was eliminated. And so after that, I was once again, a consumer or customer of the Connecticut, I want to say New York, the Connecticut Job Center in Hamden. I became a regular, and in West Haven, got to know some of those folks. And then I became aware of this program called a Displaced Worker Program, which I had never heard of. But what it is basically, and it's something that everybody should look into, who's considering switching careers or changing jobs. If your line of work, which mine was advertising, print production, if your line of work is something that is not necessarily available to you in your area, you can apply for displaced worker status through the state. And so I did that. I became aware of that by the folks at the job center in West Haven, very good folks, very enthusiastic, just a great group of people. And they said, hey, Steve, do you realize that you could qualify for this? And what it will do is it will provide money through a state grant of a couple of $1,000s for tuition for re-education. And so that would help train me in, a different industry or a different job, because it was unlikely that I would be employed in the state of Connecticut doing what I used to do in New York City. So I said, absolutely, sign me up. I'm interested in, here we are in the world of, right, Jane, Amazon, and shipping and receiving and logistics and all of that. Very exciting. There's a lot of that going on. It's a huge growth industry. So I thought, absolutely, let me tap into that. And so, long story short, I ended up going to Gateway Community College, picking up a couple of, it was 4 supply chain manufacturing certifications. Had some great instructors.
Nice.
Hadn't been back to school since I graduated college, which is pre dinosaur extinction, and so I kind of went in like, oh wow, I'm going back to school. I don't know if I can handle this. And then went at night, and it just fantastic experience. Great instructors, great program. The Gateway, great. They call it the great. It's escaping me now. It's described with the name great, and it is great. And so I actually learned a lot about cross-dock supply chain, end-to-end, international, how supply chain works in manufacturing, docking, because I was I should preface it, my prior job, which was the one that lasted almost a year, was a great job, and I was supply chain manager of printers. So I thought, all right, if I could continue to be a supply chain manager and just not of printers, then I could, kind of get through the stigma of being looked at as a print guy here in Connecticut, which is, outside of the big cities, it's really something people don't understand, right?
Right.
So, so that was my, my goal there. And so I thought, all right, I've been a supply chain manager. It was a great job. And so there's careers in this. And so all I need to do is just kind of reposition myself for manufacturing as opposed to printers. And what people don't realize is printing is manufacturing. If you've ever been to a print press, huge. You walk in, there's, I can't even tell you, depending on the number of machines they have, it can be awe-inspiring. And so it is manufacturing, but a lot of folks don't consider it such. So went and picked those up after about 4 months, and got some certifications through the state, and it was just a great experience, and even learned how to drive a forklift, which was very cool. 0 turn radius. It's the one thing I'm going to always remember about that, and wish my car had it, or my lawnmower. But the idea being, if I was going to manage that, you got to understand, the ins and outs, and forklifts are, what it's all about when it comes to warehousing and supply chain and getting things here to there. So did that, and that was just great experience. And then, as challenges come your way, what happened there was, we got to the placement stage, and that was where the state was supposed to introduce me to some companies that, would be looking for somebody like me with my experience. It was kind of a 50-50 type of relationship, I understood, where, excuse my dog, she agreed, where it would be, all right, if you, consider this gentleman, he's just taking these courses through the state, and, we, being the state, obviously they have, agreements with corporations, that house themselves here in Connecticut. And so the placement just didn't happen. For whatever reason, it just didn't work out. There was never a placement done. And so I took one of my old jobs, my first Connecticut job, I took that job. I actually was offered that back. And, it was an income, and it was, a no-brainer. Take it, work and then continue whatever you're trying to do. And so for that, I'm grateful. It was, something I had done before and something I really didn't necessarily, see for myself doing in the future again. But again, the paycheck was there and the work was there. And so that was kind of the most recent step.
Got it. Got it. So there's a lot of, like you did before, there's a lot of ups and downs and ups and downs. And so now tell us a little bit about what you're doing now and
Sure.
how you feel about all of the process.
Sure. Yeah. You and I spoke about a month ago, I want to say, maybe a month and a half ago. And so what I was able to kind of latch onto was, all right, I had this time period of many years searching, trying to find something appropriate, trying to advance myself here in this state, in this area, seeing a lot of jobs, pharmaceutical companies move up to Massachusetts, seeing New York, New Jersey kind of hiring, and just kind of, looking at my surroundings and saying, all right, if I'm not a doctor, lawyer, Indian chief here in the state, kind of difficult, to fill in those gray areas with those professions that you find in bigger cities. And so that was the key, cities. And so I thought to myself one day in February, I remember it clearly, cities, like the one I used to work and live in, New York. Who is in New York right now? I said to myself, who is actually sitting in an office in New York? And my answer to myself was few to none.
Yeah.
And so I said, and I had just been on a call with a really good friend of mine who was my manager, a coworker at a prior job in Connecticut, and then he was my manager in the really, really good job that I had. Just great guy. And he and I keep in touch a lot. And I was saying to him, when's the last time you got a really good position without knowing somebody? And he said, I don't know, can't think of that. And I said, no, neither can I. And so that was it, city, contacts. So I said, let me contact my, anyone that, I worked with in New York and for 14 years in the marketing business, advertising business, and just see what they're up to. So first call I made was to an ex-office mate of mine, worked at a great company with her together. And we had a great call on Zoom. She's just said, hey, this is really fortuitous and glad you texted me because, we might have something here. We got a lot of business. And so that was, exciting. And that was at the end of February. And so I think we talked in early March. And then they had some things going on at the company, some corporate things that, they couldn't get by at the time. And so I reached out to other contacts, anybody that I had worked with or known in that business in New York, who were friends of mine, reached out. And so I started getting a lot of interviews actually, and it's funny because prior to that, my only interview was like 2 years before. And so looking at supply chain, looking at the state of Connecticut, looking at, the placement that didn't happen, sometimes you have to get to that point to say, you know what, I'm barking up the wrong tree. And it's tough, I don't know when to say that you're going to come to that realization, but I did eventually, and everyone does eventually. Like if you're a year in and you're not getting anywhere, by all means, change it up. And I thought of any number of things, opening my own business, taking a leave of absence, maybe, spending more time with my kids and trying to figure it out. But again, things happen, when they happen for whatever reasons, but, you just keep your head on it. And so fast forward, went through a couple of interviews, got to a point where I was at third interview stage with another really great company out of New Jersey. And then I heard back from my friend again after a couple of interviews in between with other companies and possibilities that didn't quite happen. But again, I was thankful to be interviewing again, So obviously, you talk about barking up the wrong tree. Obviously, I think I had the scent. And so spoke with my friend again in the midst of several other interviews I was having. Things were looking good with that company, great company, and great opportunity possibly. And she came back. It was, let's see, I guess, probably beginning of June. And she wanted to know if I had found anything yet. And I said, still looking, got a good possibility. And she said, all right, I think we got something here. And so that was really where everything broke for me finally. And so the good thing, and this is something that I never imagined it would be a position that I was in, but the good thing is that all these little seeds I planted at the end of February, beginning of March, April, that all seemed kind of like they were going to blow away in the wind. Well, some of them did find soil and root and started to grow. And so towards the end, they started to bear some fruit, and I ended up with a series of interviews for a great position, and then my position of choice and my company of choice coming back to me, which was I said a company I worked with prior in New York, and never wanted to leave, but I had to because I was commuting from Guilford to Midtown for a year. Couldn't do that. Yeah, crazy. But here it was, COVID of all things opened up the door for what I'm doing now, and probably has for a lot of people. And so one good thing I can say about COVID is this. And so at the same time, having kind of two things going on at once, one company, in the running to possibly offer me something the following week. And then, my prior company who I loved and never wanted to leave. And then a friend of mine, actually, running the department, calling me and saying, if you haven't taken anything yet, we really love to consider you for this if you can do it. And I said, yeah, absolutely. They're going to possibly make a move in a week or a week and a half. I've never run into that in my career, have to say, never. And that's what everybody wants, right? You want to have two suitors at one time and then be able to balance it. And so what she did was, she just said, well, we're not losing you to them. And so it took her and the company, not a small company, not a huge company, but not a small company, it took them 1 week from that day to get me an offer in writing. And so that is it. And so now, I'm week 3 now, so it's young again. And I was last there in 07, 08. And the technology's changed, but it's biopharmaceutical marketing. And it's their print and some other types of medium, but it's their print items that we help produce, market, put out to production, the print side of it, which is where I always was. Possible other options down the road aside from print, but the print here is here to stay, because this is your packaging. For pharmaceuticals, this is your informational brochures. It's your leave behinds. It's for patients, which is where I worked before in direct to consumer, but now it's also HCPs, your healthcare providers, as an audience. So it's two different audiences we're producing items for. They work on a lot of interactive, a lot of video. It's a very creative company. Everyone here, there's like, aside from, my friend, there's a handful of people who have been there over 20 years. And I wanted to say that could have been me, if I didn't move, but there's no ifs, ands, or buts. It is what it is. You make your move, you live your life, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm just grateful to have another chance. And
wow.
This will be my 3rd time back there. So they call me a 3 boomeranger, and I'm not the only one. Which is nice to see, because that tells you, a little more about the company, is the fact that people would return that amount of times. And everything I hear is, and all the research I've done continues to be a great place to work. And so I'm working for a New York company out of my home here in Connecticut, which is fantastic. Working with great people, great brands, kind of back in the business, I always liked. And I'm going to pop in on Friday to see what's going on down there. So, because some people are going to be in the office. So that's where I am right now. And, that's what I kind of, wanted to hopefully share with you, and maybe because you and, Trish, you've been so helpful all along. And the first thing I thought
Thank
of
you.
was, anything I can do for you or your clients, which is why, I reached out to you and wanted to kind of share this. I mean, it's all, give back, right?
Yeah.
You receive, I mean, I'm a big fan of karma, and, that's how I work. And, you get what you give, and that's how I've always kind of treated, coworkers and suppliers, and obviously, anybody who's helped me out, and you guys have always been generous, and I appreciate your calls and, all the things that you do to help people. And so I just wanted to, offer this time here and just do anything I could that would kind of help your clients going forward.
Thank you. And what I'm
Thank
hearing,
you.
well, I'll receive that. Okay. Thank you for the thank you. I mean, I'm
Good.
glad I can help, but I'm also glad to receive your praise and your appreciation. So what I'm hearing is good karma, always keep really good relationships with everybody, and then pop back in their lives and say, hey, how you doing? What's going on? I think those are really good pointers, because you can't spend all day trying to shove your resume into every single job opening and hope and pray that it gets through the ATS and hope and pray that an HR person sees it. And that's not, I mean, that's a part of it. But I know Trish is very much about networking and finding your target companies. And you knew what company you wanted to work for, and you found a way back in to a company that you loved in a manner that suited your life, your current way you're living in Connecticut, not close to New York City, but in the middle of the shoreline, so it's really remarkable. It's wonderful and remarkable to see how you were dissatisfied with how things were going, and then you've found your path. And what I hear is determination and grit, and not settling for here's what I'm doing now, but I'm not here forever, and I'm not just gonna take it and leave. I'm not just gonna take it and let go of my dreams of getting back into an industry which I love. So it's great that you found something, and it sounds like a super solid company with a lot of great future and a lot of longevity with a lot of people. So it's bright, shining future.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, you hit on all the points. So, that's absolutely true. And again, I mean, there were times, during the decade, however you want to look at it, where, I considered other things, obviously. And you know what, that over that period of time, even over a period of time of a month, or I'm sorry, a year, maybe, that's going to happen. You're going to say, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Maybe I should be concentrating on something else, maybe,
Yeah.
I mean, and again, like I tell my kids, college is great, do it. But, let's also not forget the trades, because
The trades.
there are, excuse me, there are great options for that. And that's your own business a lot of the time. And, and
Yeah.
so, there's different things available now. And of course, there's being a YouTube star and all that stuff, which we didn't have when we were younger. But,
Right. Somewhere,
excuse me.
somewhere in between YouTube star, the trades, and college, you will find your dream job, right?
There
Your
it
dream
is.
career.
There it is. There it is. But if it worked for me, it can work for anybody. And so that's kind of what I wanted to stress here.
Yeah.
Not talking, not being self-deprecating, but again, I had, a lot of things, roadblocks, and, being very pigeonholed into an industry that I was really trying to get out of, but
Yes.
it ended up coming back to me because of a pandemic, really.
Yes. And I love that there was a silver lining in all the pain and suffering and economic downturn, right? There was something that came to you that was positive. And I feel like there's a lot of opportunities for remote work because we had to do it managers and owners and presidents are realizing that it is more feasible and people are not staying home watching TV all day. They're actually working. So,
Oh yeah, and in many ways, like I've done remote work now for probably about 5 years, and I mean, in many ways, maybe over 5 years actually, a couple of years towards the end of another job, and aside from a presence in the office, which I think is great, and if you can, and you had a big meeting or whatever it is, or you just want to see some coworkers, but I found that working remotely, I mean, many ways it worked harder
yeah.
because you weren't getting up. I mean, I would get up to get coffee, but I would wait until I did this, that, or the other thing. And sometimes you're
Mhm.
sitting there going, okay, I really got to get up out of this chair.
Yeah.
Whereas if you were in an office, you might have somebody come around, talk to you, say, hey,
Uh,
come on, let's go to the coffee machine or whatever, or let's do
yeah.
this or go out to lunch. Yeah, you're not doing any of that, So yeah, it's
Zero.
in many
Yeah.
ways, yeah. But
Yeah. Zero. Yeah. I remember many years ago, there's, people would come by my cubicle and just sit and chat for a while. And I'm like, I just want to work when I'm at work.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I appreciate working. I always work at home. So yeah.
yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
so super, super stuff. I'm gonna stop the recording.
Okay, sounds great.